Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to Unlocking Peak Performance, and welcome to the panel. I want to kick us off today by asking to begin with the end in mind, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around what does it look like when peak performance is achieved or when cultural transformations happen? What are we listening for? What are we seeing in organizations that have made this change occur? So I'll kick it off. Maybe Nick, would you like to start us off? And then we'll go from there.
Sure, and thanks for having me, and hello everybody. It's wonderful to be here. What does it look like when transformation is being achieved within an organization? And I have a real bias around storytelling and the importance of story. And so, number one, my feeling is that if an organization and its people are clear on the message and purpose of the organization, but more importantly, that each individual within the organization can share the narrative and the story about that organization as it relates to what was and what could be. We are the only, as to quote Yuval Harari, we are the only mammals on Earth that can literally create fiction. And together we can share those stories and follow those stories together. So my answer would be that we can articulate the story and the future and the change that we've created.
Thank you. Would Alex or Uri, would you like to jump in, or Guillermo?
Sure, I'll jump in. I really align with how Stephen Kotler talks about peak performance, and I think it's from an individual point of view, but we can take it to the organization as well. And really talking about intrinsic motivators and harnessing curiosity and passion and purpose in order to do really meaningful and impactful work. And I think when we start talking about performance and transformation, when you're spending a majority of time doing things that you are optimally set up to do, which means knowing what you're great at, having an organization that sets up the roles and the interdependencies in an optimal way, you are in what a lot of us will know as flow state more often than not. And I think that is really the peak of performance, when you can spend more time with no sense of time, with things that feel meaningful, with things that just drive you, that you're absorbed in the challenge, rather than battling against and constantly being distracted and derailed and pulled in numerous directions. And I think as an individual, that's a lot to do with doing the work and finding the right role. And as an organization, it's about mapping the roles and getting the right people into those roles and how they all connect to drive things forward.
So it's very simple and easy, in other words.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a weekend's work.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because I think that leads to this follow-up question, which maybe Uri or Guillermo want to let us off with. But what do you see then are some of the challenges to achieving these kinds of states in organizations today? What commonly comes up as barriers that block or prevent groups and individuals from achieving what they're looking for?
Okay, I guess I'll go. So, from my experience, teams that perform really well need trust. But trust is something that really happens when it comes from the heart. So, if it's not your experience, it's not your truth. I love that saying, because when you're trying to reach a common goal, as you were saying, so we all have a narrative, we all might think we understand what that narrative is, but we have to go through a process of deep listening. So it's not just about, oh, let's put the goals there, because people might think, oh, I need to move here, I need to put resources here, and the reality is that people need to trust each other that they're gonna be where you thought they should be, and they're gonna be there for you. And honestly, when you see high performance teams in soccer or other sports, that's how they feel. And if you ask them, and if you experience it yourself, you come from not your brain, but you come from a sense of, not logic. And that's how you should try to approach it.
That's interesting because the science actually supports what you're saying, that cognition is embodied. We actually know and feel when we are in this state of learning and working together. So I think that's a really important call out, that there is a sensed part of this experience that we're creating and looking for. Uri, would you like to add some of the other challenges you've seen organizations have?
Complementing or in relation to what all we have said, a shared vision, a shared narrative is very important. But the narrative is collective and it has to evolve through times, because we don't live in one scene, we live in the movie. And we are a lot of people in that movie. Heart and mind, it's a notion that we divide. But I think that this notion, it's all together. Heart is mind and mind is heart. We in the Western world, we have separated that. Mm-hmm. I think that I can share a framework that might help. It's a framework of freedom, but not in the state of the Western freedom of individuality. Not its independence, it's the interdependence of teams to get that performance. And it's freedom to be, now in the times of inclusion, equity, diversity, it's freedom to be who you are, freedom to develop who you want to be, and it's not for one, it's for all of us. Freedom to fade. Nobody has to be in the spotlight all the time. Why? Why we need to have to be in the spotlight all the time? Freedom to be, freedom to become, freedom to fade, and freedom to fail. Failure is important, not only to learn, to enrich our hearts, to understand that we will try once and twice and third times and keep on going that. And this is the most important thing, perseverance. I talk with all my people, clients or people, human beings, adults, and I ask them, what is the most important feature? And they say it's perseverance.
Yes. Again, as I'm listening, I'm hearing about how knowing and doing and feeling and becoming, you just introduced this piece, and the narrative arc of that is what's enabling, what I would call legitimate participation within the organization, opening this pathway for membership, full responsibilities, full rights, full membership in the organization. So I understand that connection there to sort of a liberal, the truest meaning of the word, of liberating an idea.
And this is a practice that is simple, but it's not taken. We need to do it all the time on an ongoing basis.
Yes. Again, we're giving them easy advice to implement today. This is what we had promised, right? The human side is never straightforward or easy.
Trust, you can do it.
Yes. Guillermo, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I wanted to add to what Uriel was saying. And I think in the Western world, we're so used to putting stars on people. And that is horrible for a team performance. Because when you put stars to people, then either they're only listening to their boss and they're getting compensated for the cookie, or you're gonna have to change sometimes who the star is in the play when it evolves. And that's why it's so important to be able to sit back and enjoy sitting back and not always having the star. And that is not part of our culture. And the only other thing I would like to add is letting go. Because people normally think that when you're in a team, you have to convince people through persuasion or through collaborating. But what is true collaboration is letting go of what you thought was your great idea. And now you have to, build upon something else.
The team, I think that nowadays the teams have to have a flexible membership.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because we have to change as a team. And the team also has to go not only on bonding, that is very important, has to go to the external world and to see what is happening, what the customers, clients, users, people on the social impact are thinking, and being connected to that. It's not only the team, it's going outside to get inside again.
Yeah. I'm thinking that maybe it's helpful to share some concrete examples of some of the work that we've done with organizations or in the past that might illustrate some of what we've just brought out as ways to build toward the strategic growth and cultural transformation that organizations are looking for. So I'm wondering if someone might share about how you've helped someone navigate some of these challenges and pitfalls. Maybe Nick or Alex, if you want to start us off this round, and we'll hear about that.
Sure. There's an organization in Canada, I'm from Canada, that is in the payments, in the fintech space. And it's actually one of Canada's older organizations and affiliated with the banks. Its narrative was old, staid, and almost like a nonprofit. And one of the transformations that has taken place is that it's moved from being a old, staid financial support to a trusted fintech in Canada, one of actually the most trusted in Canada. And I'm going to go back to that word that you used, trust. And that was the narrative, the entire narrative and the entire experience of the organization, as well as its brand, was built around trust, digital trust, consumer trust. And the organization has completely shifted its focus and has become a leader not just in fintech, but in the verification, the digital verification space. And it really started with a focus on purpose and looking at the narrative, and then of course forecasting how can we build that idea into the future. So that's just one example that I've had some close experience with in Canada.
Alex, would you like to give us some concrete examples you've worked with?
Yeah, it's brought to mind actually a client, also ironically in Canada, even though I'm not based there, who we were working on, what the next steps were. There was going to be bringing in a partner as kind of an operation and head of people, and there was a lot of things we were talking about. And during that process, I said, well, while that person is, we're working on that structure, we're working on that person, it can take a long time. So we decided to bring the team into some of the planning, into some offsites and strategic planning. And what was really, really important for the outcome that ended up being achieved was we found the balance where I said, you're the leader, your job is to hold the vision, hold the why, and explain it in a way that people buy into it, but then allow people in to be part of the ideating, part of the distillation of how we're gonna make that happen. And so what ended up happening was they had these offsites, and my client, the founder, held a stronger role in saying, articulating, this is our vision, this is where we're going, and I expect all of you to be part of that. And then the process of those offsites and subsequent meetings and things that we changed and how they worked was, he was flabbergasted at how galvanized the team were, how many people stepped up into more mature roles, taking on leadership, wanting to spearhead new things. And it took a lot of weight off of him in the process of then bringing in another person to lead and grow and set them up for that next level of sustainable growth. And so it's that middle ground. I really believe in what you said, Nick, about the why and the communication. And if people understand how what they are doing impacts that directly and impacts their peers, it is a lot more motivating and communication is better. And then at the same time, as a leader, you are responsible to hold that and hold everyone accountable to that.
Yeah, I just want to add like that. If you can articulate the North Star, and as you said, not just articulate it, but get people to rally behind you, and then not only that, you're never going to reach that North Star. So they now get to articulate what the next North Star is.
Oh yeah, it's just a directional, right? I always say that, you want to know what direction you're headed, and you'll probably change before you get there, but I see this trend in a lot of my clients, which was this particular leader was almost too nice to his team and was not pushing them enough, and therefore not providing the opportunity for them to actually step into their growth. And so it was limiting the organization's ability to grow and perform. And so by creating a little bit more onus on the team, it created that opportunity for them to really step up, and they did.
You know, you've both opened up this piece, and I've heard it before, which is leadership keeps coming up in the conversation. I mean, we can't talk about this kind of work without talking about leaders. So I'd be curious to hear about some of these critical skill sets. I mean, certainly it sounds like articulating a vision, pointing directionally and strategically toward where the organization's heading, building trust has already come up, this authenticity and recognition of belonging has already come up. So I'd love to just hear from all of you, really, you know, some of those critical skill sets you see leaders need to have for this kind of work to take hold in their organizations. And maybe we'll just start on this end and we'll kind of lightning round down.
I would love to talk about culture. I think that culture is the amalgama, it's the cement of all of it. But culture, it's always talk like something that other people do. And I think maybe it's the most critical thing, because we are only human beings. I have a little conflict on the idea of leadership in the traditional way, that the founder is the leader, the only leader. I think that the leadership is distributed, and leadership is human beings. In that sense, I think of culture as magnetic fields. And these magnetic fields give us the chance to alignment. And how you show culture. In startups, in innovation, I always talk and share, and please, everything that I share that was said to me by a good person, everything that I share, please, I want to share with you to trust, but also to have doubt. Experience for yourself, not because someone says that. Experience if that works or not. Coming back, how do you show culture? That magnetic fields. When you hire, before acceptance, in the interview, when you accept, in the onboarding, but not only that, when you fire, flexible membership on the teams, you need to fire. We all need. And there is a beautiful sentence that is said, if you want to have healthy relationships, I need to speak in Spanish too. If you want to have healthy relationship, you need to have unpleasant conversations. Applies always. So this unpleasant conversation, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we need to part ways. Hire, fire, and reward. Many times I see companies or startups that applaud and clap on sales. But when you innovate and you don't sell, nobody works that. So there is a conflict, double speech. All the time there is double speech. We talk. Hire, fire, reward. That magnetic fields for culture.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to try to give a little bit of my perspective on culture. I think you have to reflect upon values because everybody says, okay, if we figure out the North Star, what you're connected to, and that aspirational part, okay, that's good. But then, as all founders know, you need to pivot. But when you pivot, you need to come from your principles or your values, or there are many words. And so when you operate from there, it's easier for other people in the team to understand where you're coming from. And it's not necessarily the metrics, but it's the principle. And then I want to also add onto your comment, because we think of goals as something that's going to happen in a year. Now people are thinking, no, what's going to happen in 3 months? But the reality is that the world is changing so fast that you need to figure out as a team how you're gonna do whatever I expect you to do in a very visible short time. And when you're not showing up for me, you cannot be part of the team.
Absolutely.
And that's the part of the conversation people normally don't want to have. And that's why your ambition has to be great, because if it's not that great, you're not going to have people wanting to be on your ship.
Because
right?
culture, sorry, because adding to that, culture is not aspirational. Culture is observational. You need to see it.
Yeah.
You need to understand it through magnetic fields in that mechanism.
I'll just add that it's the behaviors of the people that are living the values, so that we can examine and experience.
Walk the talk and not talking the talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, we're probably all saying the same thing to a degree, but as a leader, being in integrity with your values, leading by example, owning when you do fail and making it okay for others if they fail, to let it be known and let the group fix it, right? Creating that culture of safety, and then creating, it's, as a leader, it's boundaries, doing what you say you're gonna do, leading by example, delegation, and again, creating safety to fail. How do you delegate to actually get people doing what they need to do autonomously, and giving you the space to increasingly become a better leader and support more people, more projects, a bigger organization? It's a lot of it comes down to the more personal development things in order to be able to communicate and generate that followership and be extremely clear in your expectations in a way that people feel they can meet them.
I would like to add a personal experience to this, which is we all think about values as something abstract. I wish everybody would take a little bit of their time and figure out what their values are, like literally, like what are my values? What does it mean for me? And then when you go into that rabbit hole, it is not necessarily an easy road. So when people think I want to transform, there is a price to be paid.
Absolutely.
And it is uncomfortable. So if you want to do it genuinely.
Absolutely.
The image of a phoenix exists for a reason.
This is amazing. So as the cultural anthropologist, it's so interesting listening, because you realize, as you mentioned, we're all saying very similar things in our own ways, and hearing it in those different voices, I'm hoping, is part of how this message gets out there. And what a beautiful way to end it with this idea of a phoenix. You can always begin again. You can always change. You can always transform. And so hopefully that's an inspiring way to end our conversation together today. Not enough time to hear all of the wonderful ideas in your heads.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Yes, no,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.